a better world.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to the program. You're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Tonight's headlines, here they are.
France raised its alert to the highest level nationally after a knife-wielding man killed 3 people at a church in the city of Nice in the third apparent jihadist attack in just over a month.
21 people have been killed and dozens more were feared dead on Thursday after a typhoon tore through central Vietnam, triggering landslides and causing some of the worst destruction seen in years.
India passed 8 million coronavirus cases on Thursday, with the world's second worst hit country bracing for a new wave of the pandemic. A man wielding a knife at a church in the French city of Nice killed 3 people, slitting the throat of at least one and injured several others before being apprehended by police, according to officials. French anti-terror prosecutors have opened an inquiry into what the city's mayor called an Islamo-fascist attack. Take a look.
Comme la France et peut-être plus que d'autres lieux de France, aujourd'hui est en train de payer un tribut beaucoup trop lourd en étant une fois de plus victime de l'islamo-fascisme. Il ne fait aucun doute que l'auteur de ces actes, qui n'a cessé de répéter en boucle devant nous Allahu Akbar alors qu'il était médicalisé sur place, quel était le sens de son geste.
Police said 2 victims died at the Basilica of Notre Dame in the heart of the city on the Mediterranean coast, while a 3rd person died of injuries after seeking refuge in a nearby bar. There were unconfirmed reports in the French media that at least one of the victims had been beheaded. The Guardian, in its report, said the knife man entered the church at 9 a.m. on Thursday and within 10 minutes had killed 3 people, one of them a sacristan or church warden. He was neutralized by police in the church at 9:10 a.m. Thursday's attack drew condemnation from France's allies, with Germany's Angela Merkel voicing solidarity with France, and the EU Parliament President David Sassoli saying this pain is felt by all of us in Europe. Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte condemned a vile attack but vowed it will not shake the common front defending the values of freedom and peace. The attack also comes just days after thousands rallied across France in solidarity with a teacher beheaded for showing pupils cartoons of the Islam prophet Muhammad. The history teacher, Samuel Paty, was killed by an 18-year-old Chechen man. Since Paty's killing, French officials, backed by many citizens, have reasserted the right to display the cartoons, and the images have been widely displayed at marches in solidarity with the slain teacher. Now that has prompted an outpouring of anger in parts of the Muslim world, with some governments accusing French leader Emmanuel Macron of pursuing an anti-Islam agenda.
21 people have been killed and dozens more were feared dead after a typhoon tore through central Vietnam, triggering landslides and causing some of the worst destruction seen in years. Typhoon Molave hit villages as it made landfall a day earlier, tearing roofs from homes and bringing heavy rain to an area already badly affected by weeks of flooding. 19 bodies had so far been pulled from the mud across 3 hard-hit villages in Quang Province, state media reported. Authorities said another 45 people were believed to be buried in the area. Soldiers were among a search team using heavy bulldozers and excavators to better access 2 of the villages. 2 people were killed earlier as they tried to protect their homes from the typhoon, Vietnam's 4th storm this month. Authorities relocated around 375,000 people to safety, canceled hundreds of flights, and closed schools and beaches. It made landfall south of Da Nang, packing winds of up to 145 kilometers per hour before weakening to a tropical depression on Thursday. Nearly 90,000 homes had their roofs blown off and many were destroyed in the storm, and that is according to the International Federation of Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies. 26 fishermen were still missing on Thursday, with helicopters and Navy ships deployed to look for their 2 vessels that disappeared before the storm made landfall.
Meanwhile, Hurricane Zeta barreled through the southern United States as a Category 2 storm on Wednesday, bringing dangerous winds and surging ocean waves as New Orleans residents were left without power. Zeta, which was downgraded to a tropical storm during Thursday's early hours, would continue to spread well inland across portions of northeastern Alabama, northern Georgia, the Carolinas, and southeastern Virginia, according to the National Hurricane Center. It was packing maximum sustained wind speeds of 60 miles per hour. The center said at 0900 GMT early on Thursday. New Orleans Mayor Latoya Cantrell said the city was dealing with many downed power lines. The city emergency medical service tweeted that there had been 1 electrocution fatality from a downed power line. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves had signed an emergency declaration ahead of Zeta's approach earlier on Wednesday, and Alabama Governor Kay Ivey took to Twitter to advise state residents to prepare for the storm and listen to all local advice. Hurricane and storm surge warnings were lifted for Louisiana, but Governor John Bell Edwards urged people to stay inside. Residents to evacuate vulnerable areas or stock up on emergency supplies of food, water, and medication for at least 3 days. Curfews were in effect for harder hit coastal areas.
In other news, research has found that the COVID pandemic has reached a critical stage in England, with prevalence doubling since last month, with the fastest increases in the south, where the R number has risen above 2. Interim results from the unpublished REACT-1 study show that the overall prevalence of infection in the community in England is 1.28%, or 128 people per 10,000 population. We have Erica Celestino. Erica?
Coronavirus in England are now doubling every 9 days. Official figures showed on Thursday, with the sharply increasing death toll piling pressure on the government to take national action. Another 310 deaths of those testing positive for the virus were reported on Wednesday, the second consecutive day of more than 300 fatalities. The upward trajectory of cases is now presenting a serious challenge to Prime Minister Boris Johnson's strategy of localized restrictions on the worst-hit areas. On the 25th of October, 128 people per 10,000 were infected in England, up from 60 on October 16, according to an ongoing study by Imperial College London and Ipsos Mori. The national R rate, which indicates the number of people one person with the virus is likely to infect, rose to 1.6. Prevalence was highest in northern England, although rates were climbing across all age groups and all regions, according to the study. Earlier this year, Johnson was criticized for his initial relaxed approach to the outbreak, even as the number of positive cases and deaths spiraled elsewhere in Europe. He eventually imposed a national lockdown in late March, shutting all non-essential shops and schools and forcing millions to work from home to cut transmission rates. The stay-at-home measures were lifted in June as cases dwindled, but as numbers spiked again from September, he has so far resisted calls for a second national lockdown. The government is reluctant to do so given the damage the first did to the economy, triggering a wave of job losses and a severe dent in output. Instead, England has a three-tier set of restrictions depending on rates of infection. But the Sun newspaper reported that government scientists now want stricter regulations as they warn there could be 25,000 virus patients in hospital by the end of November. Many local leaders have resisted more stringent rules in their regions due to the devastating economic consequences and concerns over the mental health of residents. With many of the worst affected areas in northern English seats his Conservative Party won from Labour in the last election, Johnson faces a difficult political balancing act.
In other news, India passed 8 million coronavirus cases on Thursday, with the world's second worst hit country bracing for a new wave of the pandemic. There have also been more than 120,000 deaths across the country of 1.3 billion people, and that is according to latest government figures. Only the United States has seen more infections with 9.1 million confirmed cases and nearly 230,000 deaths. India has one of the world's lowest death rates, and the government has highlighted the slowing number of new infections in recent weeks. But authorities are preparing for a new surge after Diwali, the country's most important religious festival happening on November 14. Textiles Minister Smriti Irani has become the latest of several cabinet members to test positive. A stringent lockdown imposed in March has gradually been eased as the government seeks to reboot the economy after the loss of millions of jobs nationwide. But experts say this has helped spread the disease. New Delhi recorded 5,000 new cases on Wednesday, its highest daily figure since the outbreak of the pandemic. Officials have warned that the capital could see more than 10,000 cases a day in the next wave.
From India to Sri Lanka, the capital will go back into lockdown. Joining us live from Sri Lanka is Vanessa Viloria Silva. Hello, Vanessa.
Hi, Alma. Good evening. Yes, Alma. Sri Lanka's capital will go back into lockdown from Friday following a surge in coronavirus cases. Our government reported more than 9,200 COVID-19 infections, with over half detected in the past 3 weeks. This was after more than 8,000 garment factory workers tested positive. Health officials said around 5.5 million people living in the capital, Colombo, and 2 neighboring districts would be only allowed to move around for essential services. The lockdown for 3 days could be extended depending on the pace of infections. Sri Lanka imposed a 3-month lockdown until the end of June, with authorities lifting the restrictions after declaring that there was no community transmission of the virus. The new measures followed a 12-hour visit to Colombo by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for your updates there in Sri Lanka. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you so much, Alma, reporting live from Sri Lanka. This is Vanessa Viloria Silva. and we live in interesting times.
A mandatory mask order came into force in Pakistani cities on Thursday in a bid to prevent a second wave of coronavirus cases in the country as winter approaches. For months, Pakistan appeared to have dodged the worst of the pandemic, baffling health experts after fears its crowded urban areas and ramshackle hospitals would be overrun. But cases have been steadily rising in recent weeks. Pakistani health officials on Wednesday unveiled a string of new measures, including mandatory mask orders in the country's major urban areas, lockdowns in hotspots, and restrictions on some businesses' operating hours. Pakistan on Wednesday reported 825 new coronavirus cases in the past 24 hours, sparking fears of a second wave of the virus, according to the health ministry. The nationwide case count now stands at 330,200 cases. Meanwhile, with 14 new deaths, total fatalities rose to 6,759.
Singapore will allow visitors from mainland China and an Australian state hard hit by COVID-19 from next month in a further easing of pandemic border restrictions, according to authorities. Visitors will be required to take a virus test upon arriving in Singapore and will not need to quarantine if they record a negative result when the new rules take effect on November 6. Both mainland China and Victoria State in Australia have comprehensive public health surveillance systems and displayed successful control over the spread of the COVID virus. A press release from the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore, or CAS, said the risk of importation from these places is low. It said Singapore had earlier lifted restrictions for visitors from other parts of Australia, Brunei, New Zealand, and Vietnam. None of the 602 arrivals so far from those destinations had tested positive for the coronavirus after arriving in Singapore, according to CAS. Singapore closed its borders in March to tourists and short-term visitors, and later implemented a partial lockdown as coronavirus outbreaks swept through dormitories housing hundreds of thousands of migrant workers. The city-state has recorded nearly 58,000 COVID-19 cases, but only 28 deaths, and is gradually reopening its borders as it seeks to revive an economy battered by the pandemic. It has already announced quarantine-free green lane arrangements for essential businesses and official travel with several countries, including Japan, Malaysia, South Korea, and Indonesia. Singapore also announced a travel bubble with Hong Kong earlier this month, though a start date has not yet been announced.
In other news, bars, restaurants, and services prepared Thursday to shut down in France and Germany as lockdown measures return to Europe to halt a surging tide of coronavirus cases. As the pandemic spread worldwide, hundreds of thousands of new infections took the known global caseload past 44 million, with nearly 1.2 million deaths. Starting Friday, France will bar people from leaving their homes without authorization. Bars and restaurants will be closed until at least December, and travel between regions will be limited. That was announced by their President Emmanuel Macron in a televised address on Wednesday. Factories and building sites will remain open, as will creches and schools, although children as young as 6 will be required to wear masks. In Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel has ordered a lighter round of shutdowns from Monday, November 2nd, until the end of the month. Hotel stays are to be restricted, while professional sport, including Bundesliga football, is set to take place behind closed doors. Merkel also warned against the threat of lies and disinformation, conspiracy, and hate that are undermining the global battle against the pandemic.
In other news, Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno Dumagoso said the city of Manila will install radio frequency identification, or RFID, for city residents this weekend as the government bats for a 100% cashless tollway payment. The mayor said the activity has been scheduled on Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Kartilya ng Katipunan beside the Manila City Hall. He also said he has received numerous requests from Manila residents asking for help in easing traffic congestion in different toll gates where RFID mass registrations are now being done. With the RFID installation in the city government hopes to reduce traffic jams in the different toll gates and shorten the waiting time for passengers. He also clarified that the RFID installation would only cater to those who have Class 1 vehicles or cars, SUVs, and passenger vans such as UV Express. Trucks and other large vehicles are not included.
Still here in the Philippines, a magnitude 5 quake jolted Batangas and was felt in nearby areas. That, according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, on Thursday afternoon. The tectonic quake struck 9 kilometers southwest of the municipality of Mabini at 1:25 p.m. local time. PHIVOLCS earlier logged this as magnitude 4.5 and later updated it to magnitude 5. It had a depth of 2 kilometers. Intensity 4 was felt in the towns of Mabini, San Luis, Lemery, Rosario, Agoncillo, Calatagan, Balayan, Bawan, Santa Teresita, all in Batangas, and Tagaytay City, Alfonso, and Amadeo in Cavite. Intensity 3 was also felt in Batangas City, Malvar, Talisay, Tanawan, and Alitagtag towns in Batangas and San Pablo in Laguna. Intensity 2, however, was reported in Quezon City, Mandaluyong City, Navotas, Mahayhay in Laguna, and Dolores, Quezon, while Intensity 1 was reported in Malabon City, Pasay City, Talisay in Batangas, and Santa Cruz, Laguna. Some netizens in Cavite and Metro Manila also took to social media saying that they felt an earthquake past 1 p.m. and were wondering if it was really an earthquake. PHIVOLCS said aftershocks are possible while damages are not expected from the quake.
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Star Tollway is a 41.9-kilometer highway that stretches out from Santo Tomas, Batangas, all the way to Batangas City. An important component of the company's portfolio, the NAIA Expressway project is a 5.4-kilometer elevated expressway that connects the Skyway system to NAIA Airport terminals and the entertainment city. SMC Infrastructure's ventures also include other projects aside from the toll road business.
Mabuhay! I'm Joy Cancio. Samahan niyo kami tuklasin ang mga bagong magpapayanig sa TNG stage. Let's celebrate the wonderful world of dancing dito lang sa Bigger and Better Tagisan ng Galing Part 2. Here on Net 25.
Welcome back. European aircraft maker Airbus said that one-off charges related to the deep job cuts announced earlier this year pushed it deep into the red in the third quarter. Airbus said in a statement that it booked a net loss of 767 million euros or $900 million in the period from July to September, compared with profit of 989 million euros a year earlier. The statement also said operating or underlying profit fell by 49% to 820 million euros and revenues declined by 27% to 11.2 billion euros. Earnings were hit by a restructuring charge of 1.2 billion euros related to the decision to axe 15,000 jobs. And while Airbus said that uncertainty resulting from the pandemic prevented it from issuing any earnings forecast for the whole year. It was confident it had stopped the cash hemorrhage seen earlier this year. With global air traffic not expected to return to 2019 levels until 2023 or 2025, Airbus said it had scaled down the rate of production of its A320, A220, A330, and A350 planes. In the 9 months to September, aircraft deliveries have fallen by about 40%, with a shortfall of about 20% in the third quarter alone.
Digital payment transactions in government agencies are expected to increase as the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas encourages more offices to use eGovPay. In a virtual event titled Advancing E-Payments via Public-Private Partnership, hosted by the Makati Business Club on Wednesday, BSP Governor Benjamin Diokno said there are over 280 government agencies and LGUs, or local government units, using the electronic payment system. eGovPay was launched in November 2019 as a payment solution for streamlining and digitization of government collections and disbursements. It is aimed at addressing leaks in government revenue collections and ensuring transparency. Since its introduction, the electronic payment system has registered a 688% rise in transaction volume from 162 to 1,277 as of end of June this year.
And the Bank of Japan lowered its economic growth and inflation forecast for this fiscal year. But while its massive monetary easing policy was left untouched, its governor said officials were ready to unveil fresh support measures if needed. Japan's economy is likely to follow an improving trend, with economic activity returning and the impact of the novel coronavirus waning gradually. But the pace is expected to be only moderate while vigilance against COVID-19 continues, according to the central bank in its quarterly report issued after a policy meeting. It said its forecast for growth was now lower compared with that given in July, mainly due to a delay in recovery in services demand, but is somewhat higher for fiscal 2021 and more or less unchanged for fiscal 2022. The year-on-year change in prices, excluding fresh food, is likely to be negative for the time being, according to officials, citing factors including the virus, previous declines in oil prices, and a domestic travel subsidy program. For the year to March 2021, the BOJ expects the economy to shrink 5.5% against a 4.7% contraction in the July estimate, while prices are seen falling 0.6% compared with a previously forecast of 0.5% decline. For the fiscal year to March 2022, however, it revised up growth and inflation forecast to 3.6% from 3.3% and 0.4% from 0.3% respectively.
Japan's Panasonic said Thursday that first-half net profit more than halved from a year earlier as the coronavirus pandemic weighed on its businesses at home and overseas. The consumer electronics giant said its bottom-line profit dropped to 48.9 billion for the 6 months to September from 100.9 billion yen in the same period last year. Sales sank 20.4% at 3.1 trillion yen. The company said in a statement, and I quote, "Domestic sales decreases due to the impact of the spread of COVID-19, despite increased sales in products such as air purifiers." Overseas sales were also battered by the virus crisis, while demand for power storage systems and industrial motors remained brisk, it added. However, the firm recovered from the first quarter when it fell into the red and logged 9.9 billion or 9.8 billion yen in net loss.
Anglo-Dutch oil titan Royal Dutch Shell on Thursday logged third-quarter net profit of $489 million, rebounding after a vast coronavirus-driven loss in the prior 3 months. Profit after tax for July-September was boosted by steadier oil prices and contrasted with a vast net loss of $18.1 billion in the second quarter when Shell was slammed by COVID-19. Earlier this year, oil prices dropped off a cliff and even briefly turned negative as airlines grounded planes worldwide, businesses closed their doors, and the world economy tanked into a downturn. Crude futures also crashed on the back of a vicious price war between key producers Saudi Arabia and Russia. But in the third quarter, Shell was boosted by a modest recovery in global crude demand and the more stable oil market, having taken a colossal $16.8 billion charge in April to June. Crude oil currently stands at about $40 per barrel, still below the roughly $60 a barrel seen in the third quarter of last year, when the group posted a net profit of $5.9 billion.
Key WTO ambassadors tapped Nigeria's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as the best pick to lead the organization. But she was opposed by Washington, who said it supported South Korean Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee instead. Let's watch this.
The purpose of this meeting was for the 3 facilitators, led by General Council Chair David Walker of New Zealand, to present to the membership their assessment of the candidate that had the best chance of attaining a consensus of the membership. That candidate, as recommended by Chairman Walker, is Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala of Nigeria. One delegation could not support the candidacy of Dr. Ngozi and said they would continue to support South Korean Minister Yoo. That delegation was the United States of America. There will be a General Council meeting held on the 9th of November, at which we hope to take a decision on this very important matter. There was a huge amount of support for the Troika, for the process that they've run.
The initial pool of 8 candidates for the WTO's top post has been whittled down to just 2 over 2 previous rounds of consultations, with only Okonjo-Iweala and South Korean Trade Minister Yoo Myung-hee still in the race. The global trade body is thus set to be led by a woman for the first time, whichever of the 2 final candidates succeeds in their bid to follow Roberto Azevedo, who stepped down as WTO Director General in August, which is a year ahead of schedule. In a statement late Wednesday, the U.S. Trade Representative's office expressed support for Yoo, calling her, and I quote, a bona fide trade expert who has distinguished herself during a 25-year career as a successful trade negotiator and trade policy maker, end quote.
In other business news, former South Korean President Lee Myung-bak was ordered back to prison Thursday as the country's Supreme Court upheld a 17-year jail term for bribery and embezzlement offenses. The conservative Lee, who served as president from 2008 to 2013, had been out on bail awaiting the ruling and was not in court for the decision. The ruling is not subject to further appeal, and at age 78 means Lee is likely to die in prison unless he receives a presidential pardon. Police were seen at his Seoul home to take him back to prison, but according to Yonhap News Agency, he requested a delay, citing health reasons, which was accepted. He will be taken into custody on Monday. Lee was first convicted in late 2018 and then jailed. An appeals court later increased his sentence to 17 years, but granted him bail pending a further appeal to the nation's highest court. The Supreme Court on Thursday upheld his conviction for embezzling 25.2 billion won or $22 million and accepting bribes totaling 9.4 billion won, as well as the 17-year sentence. Lee is also subject to a 13 billion won fine and must forfeit assets of 5.7 billion won.
Eagle News International will be back for more. Please don't go away.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Welcome back. U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo warns over unlawful claims made by the Chinese Communist Party in the South China Sea during a meeting with Indonesia's Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi. The two sides also reaffirmed cooperation, including in the defense sector. Watch this.
We discussed the situation in the South China Sea. For Indonesia, South China Sea should be maintained as a stable and peaceful sea. International law, in particular UNCLOS 1982, must be respected and implemented. Therefore, any claims should be based on universally recognized principles of international law, including UNCLOS 1982.
We are vibrant, diverse democracies, and we honor religious freedom. We respect freedom of the seas, sovereignty, and the rule of law. These are shared visions for the world. Today, Foreign Minister Retno and I affirm the importance of keeping our shared values at the heart of our relationship and at the heart of a free and open Indo-Pacific. Security, our law-abiding nations reject the unlawful claims made by the Chinese Communist Party in the South China Sea, as is clear from Indonesia's courageous leadership on the subject within ASEAN and at the United Nations. It's a cause worth pursuing in multilateral settings, and the Trump administration very much supports this. We also welcome the example Indonesia set with decisive action to safeguard its maritime sovereignty around the Natuna Islands.
Pompeo arrived in Indonesia from the Maldives, where he announced the United States would for the first time open an embassy in the Indian Ocean archipelago, a move that reflects growing U.S. concern about increasing Chinese influence in the region. Pompeo has championed a hard line on China on issues ranging from trade to security to the COVID-19 pandemic. In July, the United States branded Beijing's vast claims in the dispute-arrived South China Sea to be illegal.
In other news, a prominent anti-establishment figure was on Thursday charged for his role in an illegal flash mob protest last year, according to prosecutors in the country's capital. Thanathorn Wanggrunduan Kit, a charismatic billionaire and founder of the dissolved Future Forward Party, is accused of 5 public assembly violations linked to the rally in Bangkok's Central Shopping District in December of 2019. Charges include failing to notify police of a public gathering, blocking a Sky train station using a megaphone without permission, and holding a rally close to a royal residence, according to lawyer Krisadang Nutcharut. The maximum sentence is 6 months in jail, according to the lawyer. Charges Thursday are part of a slew of recent legal actions against Thanathorn and other Thai MPs elected under the Future Forward banner, but who have now shifted to its successor Move Forward Party. Thai police on Thursday also announced they would summon 6 demonstrators for questioning over Monday's protest at the German embassy in Bangkok. King Maha Vajiralongkorn spends long periods in Germany and has been accused of conducting state business from abroad.
The United States on Thursday condemned China's arrest of a teenage pro-democracy activist in Hong Kong as reprehensible. A State Department spokesperson said the use of the National Security Unit of the Hong Kong Police Force for the detention of a minor in a coffee shop is reprehensible, in reference to 19-year-old Tony Chung, who was arrested by plainclothes police on Tuesday and has now been charged with secession and other crimes. Tony Chung appeared in court 2 days after he was arrested in a Hong Kong coffee shop opposite the U.S. consulate, charged with secession, money laundering, and conspiring to publish seditious content. He was remanded into custody until his next court hearing happening on January 7 next year, and faces between 10 years to life in prison if convicted under the new law. Chung is a former member of Student Localism, a small group that advocates Hong Kong's independence from China. The group said it disbanded its Hong Kong network shortly before Beijing blanketed the city in its new security law in late June, but kept its international chapters going.
Officials in the U.S. city of Philadelphia announced a nighttime curfew following 2 nights of unrest over the latest police killing of a black man whose family said suffered from mental health issues. Thousands of people have taken to Philadelphia streets, with looting and violence breaking out since police on Monday shot dead 27-year-old Walter Wallace, who was carrying a knife. Some 53 police officers have been injured, including one whose leg was broken when he was hit by a truck, while 17 police vehicles have been damaged. 2 officers shot Wallace around 4 p.m. on Monday afternoon after he refused to drop the knife as his mother tried to restrain him. The phone video of the killing posted on social media showed Wallace push his mother away and then walk towards the police. His family said he suffered from mental health problems and was on medication. Wallace's father asked why officers did not taser him instead.
Finally, in sports, Daryl Morey, whose tweet supporting Hong Kong protesters sparked a rift between China and the NBA, is nearing a deal to join the Philadelphia 76ers, that according to multiple reports on Wednesday. The former Houston Rockets general manager announced earlier this month he was stepping down as of November 1st, but The Athletic and ESPN indicated he was set to quickly land with the 76ers. Morey is set to sign a 5-year deal to oversee basketball operations with the 76ers as quickly as this weekend, The Athletic said, while ESPN reported he was in advanced talks. When Morey tweeted support for the pro-democracy protesters last October, Chinese television responded by dropping NBA games for 1 whole year, resuming only during this month's NBA Finals, with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver estimating hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue for the league in a season also rocked by the coronavirus pandemic. With Morey overseeing roster moves, the Rockets have managed 8 consecutive playoff appearances, the longest active streak in the league.
And finally, in our news, the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ in Papua New Guinea, conducted an Aid to Humanity for community outreach amid the pandemic. Echo Hortaleza Quinola reports.
A back-to-back Aid to Humanity activity was rolled out by the members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or the Church of Christ in Papua New Guinea. The community outreach benefited the disadvantaged population of Ley City and Port Moresby. As the second largest province of Papua New Guinea, the residents of Ley City time and time again took part in the Aid to Humanity conducted by the members of the Church of Christ. Food parcels were distributed to the underprivileged families to help ease their daily sustenance. The church members have been consistently organizing aid to humanity programs in this region for several years now.
Whenever you possibly can, do good to those who need it. That is the reason why we are conducting Aid for Humanity program here in Ley City, Papua New Guinea, to help the people, our countrymen, our fellow men, those who are in need, especially during this time of COVID-19 crisis.
Meanwhile, in the capital city of Papua New Guinea, Port Moresby, the Filipino Association of Papua New Guinea, FAPNANG, awarded a Certificate of Appreciation to the Iglesia ni Cristo or the Church of Christ in recognition of their generosity in building a temporary shelter to serve as a quarantine facility for COVID-19 patients. Led by Brother Hino Malangan Jr., the resident minister in Port Moresby, the Church of Christ members accepted this valuable recognition.
Sa atas po ng ating pinakamamahal na tagapamahalang pangkalahatan, ang kapatid na Eduardo V. Manalo, at sa pagkabay ng tagapangasiwa ng distrito ng Australia West, ang kapatid na Romeo Beltran, na pagkaisahan po ng mga kapatid na tulungan po ang mga kababayan nating Pilipino dito po sa Port Moresby. Marami po sa kanila ay nawalan po ng trabaho. Ang iba po ay lumabis na po ang kanilang kontrata o yung visa. Kaya ang mga kapatid ay nagtulong-tulong para matulungan sila sa mga pangangailangan nila araw-araw dahil sila po ay naghihintay pa ng kanilang pagbabalik sa ating sariling bansa.
With the leadership of the supervising minister in Australia West, Brother Romeo Beltran, the charitable works of the Church of Christ truly flourished in Papua New Guinea. The church members tirelessly touched and inspired the lives of the indigent people in this region, as told by the recipients of the various aid to humanity activities carried out through the years. Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Echo Hortaleza Quinola, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Echo.
She's so cute. I always find her so cute. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm CJ Hero. We'll see you again tomorrow.
See you back tomorrow. And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.